General Krenval stood alone in his quarters aboard the Zephyrian diplomatic ship. The room was dark, except for the soft blue glow from the status displays. He had dismissed his staff hours ago, needing time to think about what he had seen. The scars on the human's chest kept appearing in his mind. Thick white lines that should not exist on any living being. In 40 years of warfare, he had never seen anything like them. There was a soft chime at his door. "Enter," he said without turning around. Lyra stepped into the room, her young face bright with excitement. "Father, I have been analyzing the medical data from the human. The results are incredible." "Sit down, daughter," the general said. "We need to talk." Lyra sat in the chair across from his desk. She had been his pride for years, the smartest of his children, the one who would advance Zephyrian science and medicine. Now she looked at him like he was a stranger. "The human should be dead," she said. "Everything we know about plasma weapons says he should have died instantly. I know. I saw the scars." "Not just the scars, Father. I studied his medical records from the evacuation ship. His injuries were beyond anything we thought possible to survive." The general finally turned to face his daughter. "Tell me what you found." Lyra activated a holographic display that showed a three-dimensional model of Jake's injuries. "Look at this." The plasma burns covered 63% of his body's surface. They penetrated through skin, muscle, and in some places reached bone. She pointed to different areas on the display. His left lung was completely destroyed. His heart stopped 3 times. His kidney function dropped to 8%. His liver was severely damaged, and yet he lived. More than lived, Father. He fought. According to witness reports, he continued working for over an hour after receiving these injuries. He helped evacuate civilians while his body was shutting down. The general studied the display. "This contradicts everything our medical division told us about human physiology." "Our medical division was wrong," Lyra said. "Completely wrong. Humans do not heal the way other species heal. They heal through determination, through will, through something we do not understand." "What do you mean?" Lyra brought up another display, this one showing cellular repair patterns. "Most species heal in predictable ways. Cells divide at set rates, tissues regenerate according to biological programming. But look at human cellular activity during trauma recovery. The displays show chaotic patterns, cells dividing and rebuilding at rates that seemed impossible. Their healing accelerates when they are determined to survive. It slows down when they lose hope. Their emotional state directly affects their biological recovery." The general frowned. "That makes no scientific sense." "Exactly. Human medicine should not work, but it does. Human survival should be impossible, but it happens. Father, we have been fighting an enemy we do not understand at all." The general walked to his wall display, which showed a map of the current war zone. Red markers indicated Zephyrian victories. Blue markers showed human positions. There were far too many blue markers. "How many humans have we actually killed?" he asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "In our battles with human forces, how many have we actually eliminated permanently? Not just wounded, not just temporarily disabled. Actually killed." Lyra was quiet for a moment. "I would need to check the medical reports from our frontline units." "Do it, now." Lyra worked on her tablet for several minutes, accessing military medical databases. As she read, her skin grew paler. "Father, these reports are strange. Our field. Medics report killing humans in battle, but then those same humans appear in later engagements." "What do you mean they appear later?" "Medical scans show that humans we thought were dead were actually just severely wounded. They recover and return to fighting within weeks or months." The general felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Show me specific examples." Lyra pulled up battle reports from the Kepler campaign 6 months ago. "Here, our forces engaged a human military unit on Kepler 7. We reported 95% casualties among the humans. I remember that battle. A decisive victory. But look at this report from Kepler-9 2 months later. 47 of those dead humans were identified fighting with a different unit. They had recovered from injuries that should have been fatal. The general sat down heavily. How many other battles? All of them, Father. Every engagement we have had with human forces shows the same pattern. We think we are winning decisive victories, but we are just temporarily wounding an enemy that refuses to stay down. The general thought about his long military career. Victory after victory against dozens of species across hundreds of worlds. Quick, clean conquest that left no room for resistance. But the war against humanity had dragged on for 5 years with no clear end in sight. What does this mean for our military strategy? He asked. It means our strategy is completely wrong. Lyra said. We cannot defeat humans through conventional warfare. Our weapons do not kill them permanently. Our tactics do not break their spirit. Every attack just makes them stronger and more determined. There was another chime at the door. Enter, the general said. Doc Commander Zek Thorne, his chief military aide, stepped into the room. Zek was an old soldier, scarred from many battles, loyal and direct. General, we have received new intelligence reports from the front lines, Zek said. You need to see this. What kind of reports? Zek activated his own display, showing video footage from recent battles. This is from the Rigel system, 3 days ago. Watch carefully. The video showed a human soldier taking a direct plasma rifle. Hit to the chest. The soldier fell, clearly badly wounded. But 30 seconds later, the same soldier was back on his feet, returning fire. Play it again, the general said. They watched the video 3 more times. Each time, it showed the same impossible thing. A human taking a wound that should have been fatal and continuing to fight. How is this possible? Zek asked. The humans are different from any species we have encountered, Lyra said. They do not follow normal biological rules. Zek showed more videos. Humans fighting with broken bones. Humans continuing missions with severe burns. Humans carrying wounded comrades for miles through hostile territory. Sir, our troops are becoming demoralized, Zek said. They report that humans are like ghosts. You kill them, but they keep coming back. The general studied the videos. Are soldiers exaggerating? No, sir. If anything, they are understating the situation. Human resilience is beyond anything we have seen. Lyra pulled up more medical data. Father, I have been studying human culture as well as their biology. Did you know that humans have a concept called fighting through the pain? What does that mean? It means they can ignore severe physical damage through mental discipline. They can function normally even when their bodies are badly damaged. Other species do not have this ability. No, most species stop functioning when they reach a certain level of pain or damage. It is a survival mechanism that prevents further injury. But humans can override this mechanism through willpower. The general looked at the map of the war zone again. So when we wound them, we are not stopping them. We are just making them angry. Exactly, Lyra said. And angry humans are more dangerous than healthy humans. Zek nodded grimly. Our intelligence reports support this. Human units that have taken heavy casualties fight harder than fresh units. They seem to be motivated by revenge and determination. The general was quiet for a long time. Outside the viewport, Kepler's station hung in space, filled with diplomats trying to end a war that had gone on too long. What do you recommend? He asked finally. Peace, Lyra said immediately. We cannot win this war through violence. Every attack just proves to humans that they need to be stronger, more resilient, more determined. The Council will not accept a peace that makes us look weak, Zek said. Then we do not call it weakness, the general said. We call it strategic adaptation. We have encountered a species that requires a different approach. He turned to face both of them. Lyra, I want you to prepare a full medical report on human resilience. Include everything you have learned. I will present it to the War Council. And say what, exactly? That we have been fighting the wrong kind of war. That humans cannot be defeated through conventional means. That we need to find new ways to achieve our goals. Zek frowned. Sir, the War Council expects total victory. They will not accept anything less. Then they are fools, the general said. You cannot achieve total victory against an enemy that will not die. He walked back to the viewport and looked out at the human ships docked at the station. Small vessels compared to Zephyrian warships, but filled with people who refuse to give up. How many humans are there? He asked. In their space? About 40 billion, Zek replied. 40 billion beings who heal like Jake Morrison. 40 billion people who will fight until they die and then get back up and fight some more. The general felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear, not fear of death or defeat, but fear of fighting a war that could not be won. Father, what will you tell the War Council? Lyra asked. The truth, that we have encountered a species unlike any other. That our military doctrine is inadequate. That we must change or face endless war against an enemy that grows stronger with every battle. And if they do not listen? The next morning, Jake woke up early in his small quarters on the station. He had not slept well. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Colony Prime burning. He saw the Zephyrian soldiers laughing. He saw Kate calling for help, Doc, but today was different. Today he would meet the general who had ordered it all. Jake got dressed carefully, making sure his collar covered his scars. He looked at himself in the mirror and tried to prepare for whatever was coming. The face looking back at him was older than his 27 years, but his eyes were calm. There was a knock at his door. Jake opened it to find Dr. Ben Carter standing in the hallway. Ben was the human medical officer assigned to the diplomatic mission, a thin man with kind eyes and steady hands. Jake, can we talk? Ben asked. Sure. Come in. Ben sat down on the small chair near Jake's desk. Lyra Ross came to see me last night. She had a lot of questions about human medicine. Jake sat on his bed. What kind of questions? About you specifically. About how you survived Colony Prime. She wanted to understand the medical side of what happened. What did you tell her? Ben leaned forward. The truth, that you shouldn't be alive. That your recovery was the most remarkable thing I've ever seen in 30 years of medicine. Jake had known Ben since the evacuation from Colony Prime. Ben had been the doctor who treated him on the rescue ship, who had worked for days to keep him alive. She seems to think there's something special about humans, Jake said. There is, Ben said simply. I've treated injuries from dozens of different species over the years. Humans heal differently than anyone else. How? Ben stood up and walked to the small window. Most species heal through biological processes. Cells divide, tissues repair, systems restore themselves. It's mechanical, predictable. And humans? Humans heal through will, through stubbornness, through an absolute refusal to accept death. Ben turned back to Jake. When you came to me on that evacuation ship, you were clinically dead. Your heart had stopped twice. Your brain activity was minimal. Your organs were shutting down. By every medical standard I knew, you were gone. Jake remembered those first days on the ship. Everything had been pain and darkness. But I wasn't gone. No, you weren't. And do you know what the difference was? You kept talking. Even unconscious. Even dying, you kept mumbling about people who needed help. About systems that needed to be fixed. About work that wasn't finished. Ben sat back down. I've seen this with other humans, too. Soldiers who fought for hours with wounds that should have killed them instantly. Civilians who survived disasters by sheer determination. Mothers who stayed alive long enough to save their children, then recovered completely. Lyra said our healing was impossible. It is impossible by every scientific standard. Human medicine works because humans believe it will work. Because they refuse to die until they're ready. There was another knock at the door. Jake opened it to find Commander Alex Stone, the head of human security for the diplomatic mission. Alex was a large man with gray hair and scars of his own, most of them hidden under his uniform. "Jake, we need to talk," Alex said. "Both of you." They moved to a small conference room down the hall. Alex activated a privacy screen and sat down across from them. "The Zephyrians want to meet with you, Jake," Alex said. "Specifically, General Kren Voss wants to meet the human who survived his attack. On Colony Prime." Jake felt his stomach tighten. "When?" "This afternoon. Before the formal negotiations begin. Is this a good idea?" Ben asked. "Jake doesn't have to face his attacker." "Actually, it might be the best idea we've had," Alex said. "Jake, how much?" "Do you know about Zephyrian military doctrine?" "Not much." "They attack, they destroy, they move on." "Exactly. Their entire strategy is based on quick, decisive victories. They don't understand prolonged conflict because they've never faced an enemy that could survive their first assault." Alex leaned forward. "But you did survive. And so did thousands of other humans. The Zephyrians are starting to realize that their perfect weapons aren't so perfect." "What does that mean for the peace talks?" "It means they're scared," Alex said. "For the first time in their history, they're facing an enemy they can't easily defeat. They need to understand how that's possible." Ben nodded. "Lyra spent 2 hours asking me about human physiology. She wanted to know if all humans heal like Jake did." "And what did you tell her?" "That Jake isn't unusual. That most humans who survive severe trauma show the same kind of recovery. That we're built to endure." Alex smiled grimly. "The Zephyrians thought they were fighting a normal war against a normal enemy. They're discovering that humans aren't normal at all." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Zephyrian ships docked at the station. Sleek, deadly vessels designed for quick strikes and easy victories. "What do you want me to tell the general?" Jake asked. "The truth," Alex said. "Tell him what happened on Colony Prime. Tell him how you survived. Let him understand what he's really been fighting. And if he doesn't like what he hears, then we'll deal with that too. But I think he'll listen. Lyra says he's been asking questions about human casualties from other battles. He's starting to realize that his reports of complete victories might not be accurate." Ben stood up. "I'll be there with you, Jake. If you want me to be, I'd like that." Alex handed Jake a small device. "This is a translator. It will handle the technical medical terms that the station system might miss. And Jake?" "Yes?" "Remember that you hold all the cards here. You survived something that should have killed you. You're proof that humans can't be easily defeated. That's a powerful position to be in." After the others left, Jake sat alone in the conference room. He thought about Colony Prime, about the pain and fear and anger of that day. But he also thought about the people he had helped, the lives he had saved by keeping the power systems running. He touched his chest, feeling the scars underneath his uniform. For 5 years, he had hidden them, been ashamed of them. But maybe it was time to stop hiding. A few hours later, Jake walked toward the meeting room where General Kren Voss was waiting. Ben walked beside him, carrying a medical scanner and a tablet full of data. "Are you ready for this?" Ben asked. "As ready as I can be. Remember, you're not just representing yourself. You're representing every human who has ever refused to give up, who has ever survived the impossible." Jake nodded. "I know." They reached the door to the meeting room. Through the transparent aluminum, Jake could see a tall Zephyrian in military uniform sitting at a conference table. General Kren Voss looked exactly like Jake had expected. Cold, professional, dangerous. "He's older than I thought he would be," Jake said. "Lyra says he's been a soldier for 40 years. He's never lost a battle until he met humans." Jake took a deep breath. "Let's go show him why." They entered the room together. General Voss stood up immediately, his 4 eyes focusing on Jake with intense curiosity. He was tall, even for a Zephyrian, and his blue skin had the darker tone that came with age. "You are Jake Morrison," the general said in accented English. "I am. My daughter tells me you survived the bombardment of Colony Prime." "I did." The general walked slowly around the table, studying Jake like a puzzle he couldn't solve. "I planned that attack myself. I chose the weapons, the targets, the timing. It was designed to leave no survivors. It almost worked." "Almost." The general stopped in front of Jake. "Show me." Jake looked at Ben, who nodded. Slowly, Jake unbuttoned his shirt and let it fall to the floor. The scars covered his chest and arms like a map of pain. White and pink lines that told the story of Colony Prime. General Voss stared at the scars for a long time. Finally, he reached out one finger and touched the largest scar, the one that ran from Jake's shoulder to his hip. "This should have severed your aorta," the general said quietly. "It did," Ben said, stepping forward. "His heart stopped twice during surgery. We had to rebuild most of his circulatory system." The general's hand moved to another scar, and this one should have destroyed his lungs. It punctured both lungs and damaged his trachea. He was on artificial respiration for 6 weeks. The general stepped back, his face pale. "How is he alive?" "Because he's human," Ben said simply. "Because humans don't die when they're supposed to. Because they heal through stubbornness and determination and an absolute refusal to accept defeat." General Voss sat down heavily in his chair. "I have killed millions of beings across dozens of worlds. I have never seen anyone survive injuries like these." "Jake isn't unique," Ben continued. "We have records of thousands of humans who survived. Plasma burns who continued fighting with injuries that should have been instantly fatal. Your weapons are designed to kill normal species. Humans aren't normal." The general looked up at Jake. "How many others like you survived Colony Prime?" "Enough," Jake said, putting his shirt back on. "And we all remember what happened there. Are you here for revenge?" Jake sat down across from the general. "No, we're here because we want the killing to stop. But we want you to understand that you can't win a war against humanity through violence. We're too hard to kill." General Voss was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less confident. "What do you want from us?" "Peace," Jake said. "A real peace where both our species can grow and learn from each other. And if we refuse..." The general stood up and walked to the window. Jake walked back to the main hall, his mind spinning from the conversation with Lyra. The diplomatic reception was still going on, but everything felt different now. The Zephyrians in the room weren't just former enemies anymore. They were people who had thought they were fighting a war they could win easily. Ambassador Grant found him near the refreshment table. "Jake, you look pale. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine," Jake said, but his voice sounded distant even to himself. "Did something happen? You've been gone for a while." Jake looked around the room and saw Lyra standing with a group of other Zephyrians. She was talking quickly, her 4 eyes bright with excitement. The other Zephyrians kept looking in his direction. "I had an interesting conversation," Jake said, "with one of their scientists." Ambassador Grant followed his gaze. "The young female? What did she want?" "To understand how I survived Colony Prime." The ambassador's expression grew serious. "Jake, you don't have to talk about that with anyone. Your medical records are private. I know, but maybe I should talk about it. Maybe people need to understand what really happened there." "Ambassador." Grant studied his face. "What do you mean?" Jake touched his collar, feeling the edge of his scars underneath. "She said I should be dead. That the weapons they used should have killed me instantly. She seemed shocked that I was still alive." "Their weapons are terrible," the ambassador said. "But human medicine has come a long way. The doctors on the evacuation ship saved a lot of lives." "It wasn't just the doctors," Jake said. "It was something else. Something about being human." Before Ambassador Grant could respond, Lyra approached them. She moved carefully, like she was approaching a dangerous animal. "Excuse me," she said to Ambassador Grant. "I'm Lyra Voss, research scientist. I was wondering if I could speak with Jake again." "With your permission, of course." Ambassador Grant looked at Jake. "It's your choice," Jake nodded. "It's okay. We were having a good conversation." Lyra smiled, showing sharp white teeth. "I have been thinking about what you told me about Colony Prime. I would like to understand better what happened there." Jake found a quiet corner where they could sit. Other diplomats were talking in small groups around the room, but nobody was paying attention to them. "What do you want to know?" Jake asked. "Everything," Lyra said. "From the beginning. How did the attack start?" Jake leaned back in his chair. He had told this story before to doctors and investigators and therapists, but never to a Zephyrian. "I was working in the power station," he said. "It was early morning, about 7 o'clock. I was checking the main generators when the alarm started." "What kind of alarms?" "Emergency alarms. The kind that meant incoming ships. But Colony Prime was supposed to be safe. We were far from any borders, far from any fighting." Jake closed his eyes, remembering. "I ran to the control room to see what was happening. The screen showed ships coming out of hyperspace. Big ships, military ships." "How many ships?" 12, maybe 15. "I wasn't counting carefully. I was too scared." Lyra leaned forward. "What happened next?" "The first plasma blast hit the outer buildings. The communications tower, the landing pad, the defensive systems. They took out our ability to call for help or fight back in the first 5 minutes." Jake opened his eyes and looked at Lyra. "It was smart, professional. Your people knew exactly what to hit." Lyra's skin darkened. "I am sorry. I was not part of the military then. I was still a student." "I know," Jake said. "I'm not blaming you. I'm just telling you what happened. Please continue." "The power station was one of the primary targets. We had about 200 people working there, but most of them ran when the alarm started. I stayed to try to keep the emergency systems running." "Why did you stay?" Jake thought about it. "Because people needed power to get to the evacuation shuttles. Without power, the doors wouldn't open, the lights wouldn't work, the communication systems would fail. I couldn't let that happen. So you stayed alone." "Not alone. There were maybe 20 of us left. Engineers, technicians, security guards. We all knew we were probably going to die, but we stayed anyway." Lyra's 4 eyes focused on him intently. "That is remarkable. Most species would have fled immediately." "Maybe, but we couldn't leave people to die in the dark." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, stars filled the darkness. Somewhere out there was Colony Prime, or what was left of it. "The plasma bombardment lasted about 30 minutes, he continued. "They hit the residential areas, the schools, the hospital, everywhere people might be hiding. And then they landed." "Ground troops?" "Yes, to make sure nobody was left alive. That's when it got really bad." Jake turned back to Lyra. "I was in the main control room, trying to reroute power to the evacuation area. The building had been hit 3 times, but it was still standing. Then I heard footsteps in the corridor. Zephyrian soldiers, 4 of them. They came into the control room with plasma rifles. They didn't say anything, just started shooting." Jake sat back down. This was the hard part, the part he usually tried to forget. "I dove behind the main console. The others weren't so lucky. 3 of them died immediately. The 4th, a woman named Kate, she was badly hurt but still alive. What did you do?" "I tried to help her. There was a first aid kit on the wall, and I thought maybe I could stop the bleeding. But when I moved out from behind the console, one of the soldiers saw me." Jake touched his chest unconsciously. He fired a plasma burst at point-blank range. It hit me in the chest and threw me back into the main power coupling. Lyra gasped. "The main power coupling? That would have been carrying thousands of volts." The coupling exploded. There was electricity everywhere, and the plasma energy mixed with it. I remember thinking that this was how I was going to die. But you didn't die. No, I should have, but I didn't. I was on fire, literally on fire. My clothes were burning, my skin was burning, but I was still conscious. Jake looked down at his hands. I could smell my own flesh burning. I could feel the electricity running through my body. But I was still thinking clearly. That is impossible. The shock alone should have killed you. Maybe, but I wasn't dead. I was hurt, badly hurt, but I was still alive. And I was angry. Angry? Furious. These people had come to our world, our home, and they were killing innocent people. Children, families, people who had never hurt anyone. I was so angry I couldn't think straight. Jake stood up again, pacing. Kate was still alive, still calling for help. The soldiers were laughing about something. I heard more explosions outside, more screaming, and I just ... I couldn't let it happen. What did you do? I got up. I don't know how, but I got up. I was covered in burns. Electricity was still arcing around me, but I stood up and walked toward the soldiers. Lyra's skin went pale. You walked toward armed soldiers while you were severely injured? I picked up a piece of metal from the wreckage, a support beam that had been torn loose. It was about 3 feet long, heavy. I could barely lift it, but I did. And then I hit the first soldier with it. He went down. The others turned to shoot me, but I was already moving. I hit the second one before he could fire. Jake sat back down, suddenly tired. The other 2 soldiers ran. I don't know why. Maybe they were scared. Maybe they thought I was already dead and still fighting. I don't know. You killed 2 armed soldiers while suffering from severe plasma burns. I didn't kill them. I just hit them hard enough to stop them from shooting. I'm not a killer. Lyra stared at him. You should not have been able to move. You should not have been able to think. You should not have been able to lift a piece of metal. But I did. I helped Kate get to the evacuation shuttle. I worked on the power systems for another hour, keeping the emergency lights on while people escaped. I didn't pass out until we were in space. An hour? You worked for an hour with those injuries? People needed help. I couldn't stop until everyone was safe. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. In all our research, in all our studies of different species, we have never seen anything like this. Most beings die from shock within minutes of receiving plasma burns. You not only survived, you continued to fight and help others. I wasn't the only one, Jake said. Other people did the same thing. Humans with terrible injuries who kept going until everyone was safe. How many humans survived Colony Prime? Out of about 50,000 people, maybe 10,000 made it to the evacuation ships. 10,000 survivors from a total planetary bombardment. Jake nodded. The Zephyrian military probably reported. It has a complete victory, but they were wrong. We survived, and we remembered. Lyra looked around the room at the other humans. Is that why you are here? For revenge? No, Jake said. We're here for peace. But we want you to understand that. You can't break us. You can hurt us. You can kill some of us, but you can't destroy us. We're too stubborn to die. And if we had continued the war, Jake met her eyes. We would have won. Maybe not quickly, maybe not easily, but we would have won. Because we don't give up, ever. Lyra stood up slowly. I need to tell my father about this conversation. Your father? General Kren Voss. He commanded the attack on Colony Prime. Jake felt his heart stop. He's here? He leads our diplomatic mission. He will want to meet the human who survived his perfect victory. But Jake wasn't afraid. Jake heard the door slide open behind him. He froze, his shirt still dripping in his hands. In the mirror, he saw a figure step into the restroom and then stop completely. It was the young Zephyrian female who had bumped into him. Her 4 eyes were wide, staring at his reflection in the mirror. Her blue skin had gone pale, almost white. "This is unreal," she whispered. Taking a step back, Jake quickly grabbed his jacket and held it against his chest, trying to cover the scars. His face burned with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was just cleaning my shirt." The Zephyrian didn't move. She stood there looking at him like she had seen a ghost. Her mouth was open, and Jake could see she was breathing fast. "You should not be alive," she said quietly. Jake pulled his jacket tighter around himself. "What do you mean?" "Those marks on your skin," she said, pointing at him with one thin finger. "Those are plasma burns. Deep ones. You should have died within hours." Jake looked down at his chest. Even with the jacket covering him, he knew what she had seen. The scars were hard to miss. They covered his chest like a spider web, thick white. "Lines against his skin. I got lucky," Jake said. "Lucky?" The Zephyrian stepped closer, but she was still careful to keep her distance. "No, you do not understand. I have studied plasma weapons my entire life. I know what they do to living tissue. They break down cells, stop healing, cause organs to fail. Nothing survives that level of damage." Jake stared at her. "You study plasma weapons?" "I am a scientist," she said. "My name is Lyra Voss. I work for the Zephyrian Medical Research Division. We study how different species react to our weapons." Jake felt his stomach drop. "You study how to kill people better." Lyra's skin flushed darker blue. "Not kill. Heal. We study the damage so we can learn to fix it. But we have never seen anyone survive injuries like yours." She pointed at his reflection in the mirror again. "Those scars, they go all the way around. Your torso. The pattern shows you were caught in a plasma explosion, probably from close range. The burn should have gone through your skin, into your muscles, maybe even to your bones." Jake pulled his wet shirt over his head, not caring anymore if she saw. He was tired of hiding. "They did go that deep. The doctors told me I had 3rd and 4th degree burns over 60% of my body." Lyra stepped closer, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "May I see them properly?" Jake hesitated. Nobody had asked to see his scars before. Most people tried to look away, to pretend they didn't notice. But Lyra was looking at him like he was the most interesting thing in the galaxy. "Why?" he asked. "Because you are impossible," she said. "In all our research, in all our tests, we have never seen a species survive plasma burns like that. Your scars are proof that humans are different from every other species we have encountered." Jake slowly let his jacket fall. Lyra gasped and moved closer, her 4 eyes focusing on different parts of his chest and arms. "Amazing," she whispered. "The tissue has reformed completely. Look at this pattern here." She pointed to a thick scar that ran from his left shoulder to his right hip. "This should have severed major arteries. You should have bled to death in minutes." "I almost did," Jake said. "I was unconscious for 3 days." "3 days?" Lyra's voice got higher. "Most species die from shock within the first hour. How did you survive long enough for treatment?" Jake thought back to Colony Prime, to the day that changed everything. "I don't know. I remember the explosion. Remember falling. Then I woke up in the medical bay on the evacuation ship. What do you remember from before you lost consciousness?" "Pain," Jake said simply. "More pain than I thought was possible, but also anger, I guess. I was angry that they had attacked us, angry that people were dying. I kept thinking I couldn't die yet, that I had work to do." Lyra stared at him. "You stayed conscious through plasma burns because you were angry. For a while, yes. I helped get people to the evacuation shuttles. I worked on the power systems to keep the emergency lights on. I didn't pass out until we were off planet." "That is impossible." Lyra walked around him, looking at the scars from different angles. "Plasma burns damaged the nervous system immediately. You should not have been able to move, let alone think." "Clearly," Jake shrugged. "I moved anyway." "But how?" Your body should have been shutting down. Maybe human bodies are different, Jake said. Maybe we're harder to kill than you thought. Lyra stopped walking and looked at him directly. May I? Document this? Take pictures? Measurements? This could change everything we understand about human physiology. Jake pulled his shirt back on. It was still damp, but cleaner. What do you mean, change everything? The war, Lyra said. Our entire military strategy is based on the idea that plasma weapons are final. One hit, target eliminated. But if humans can survive direct hits, if they can keep fighting even with massive injuries. She trailed off, but Jake understood. You're realizing that your weapons don't work on us the way they work on other species. Not just survive, Lyra said. Thrive. Look at you. You are here 5 years later, working as a diplomat. You have made a full recovery from injuries that should have killed you instantly. Jake looked at himself in the mirror. The scars were visible through his damp shirt, but they didn't hurt anymore. He had almost forgotten they were there. I wouldn't call it a full recovery, he said. I have scars. I get tired more easily than I used to. Some days my chest feels tight. But you are alive, Lyra said. You are functional. You are contributing to society. For any other species, those injuries would have meant death. For humans, they meant a few months of recovery. Jake thought about the other survivors from Colony Prime. There have been dozens of them, all with plasma burns, all told they might not make it, but most of them had recovered. Some had gone back to work within a year. Others had joined the military to fight back. There were others, he said. Other people with burns like mine. Most of them lived too. Lyra's skin went pale again. How many others? From Colony Prime? Maybe 40 or 50 people with serious plasma burns. I'd say about 30 of them made it. 30 humans survived plasma burns that should have killed them instantly? Jake nodded. The doctors said humans heal differently than other species. Something about our immune systems, our cellular repair mechanisms. They said we're stubborn, that we refuse to die even when we should. Lyra sat down on one of the benches near the sinks. She looked overwhelmed. We have been fighting a war against an enemy we do not understand at all. What do you mean? Our weapons are designed to be decisive. One shot, one kill. Quick and clean. But if humans can survive our best weapons, if they can keep fighting even when mortally wounded ... She looked up at him. How do you fight an enemy that will not die? Jake finished buttoning his shirt and put his jacket back on. Maybe the question is why you're fighting at all. Because that is what we do, Lyra said. The Zephyrian Empire expands. We find new worlds, new resources. If other species resist, we remove them. And if you can't remove them? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. I do not know. This has never happened before. Jake looked at her reflection in the mirror. She seems smaller now, less confident. Maybe it's time to try something different. Like what? Like talking instead of shooting. Like the peace talks we're here for. Lyra stood up and walked toward the door. I need to think about this. What? I have seen here what you have told me. It changes everything. She paused at the door and looked back at him. May I ask you something? Sure. Do you hate us, the Zephyrians? For what we did to you? Jake thought about it. He had hated them. For a while. The pain, the long recovery, the nightmares that still came sometimes. But looking at Lyra now, seeing her confusion and fear, he found the hatred had faded. I used to, he said. But hate takes too much energy. I'd rather spend that energy on something better. Lyra nodded slowly. You are a remarkable species, she said. Truly remarkable. After she left, Jake stood alone in the restroom, looking at himself in the mirror. His scars were hidden again under his uniform, but he could still feel them. For the first time in years, he didn't feel ashamed of them. Maybe Lyra was right. Maybe they were remarkable. Jake Morrison pulled his jacket tighter around his body as he stepped off the transport shuttle. The metal floors of Kepler's station were cold under his feet, and the air tasted different here. It was clean, too clean, like the air machines had. Scrubbing away everything that made it feel real. He had been on space stations before, but this one was different. This one was full of aliens. The corridor stretched out in front of him like a tunnel made of white light. The walls curved up and over his head, and soft blue lights ran along the edges. Everything was smooth and shiny, nothing like the rough metal walls of human ships. Jake kept his eyes forward and walked toward the main hall where the peace talks. What happened? Other humans walked with him, but they were all in people, diplomats and generals and scientists. Jake was just an aide, someone who carried papers and made sure the coffee was hot. He was only here because he spoke 3 alien languages and could work the translation computers. The main hall opened up before them like a giant bubble. The ceiling was so high, Jake had to tilt his head back to see it. And everywhere he looked, there were aliens. He had seen pictures before, but seeing them in person was different. The Zephyrians stood in one corner, tall and thin with 4 eyes and blue skin that seemed to glow. Their movements were quick and sharp, like birds. Jake's hand moved to his throat without thinking, touching the high collar of his uniform. Near the center of the hall, a group of silicates caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. They looked like living crystals, beautiful and strange. When they spoke, their voices sounded like wind chimes. The collective members stayed close together, their gray skin rippling as they shared thoughts through touch. Jake had read that they could feel each other's emotions, share memories just by holding hands. He pulled his sleeves down and made sure they covered his wrists. Ambassador Lisa Grant, the head of the human group, walked over to him. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but Jake knew she was one of the smartest people in the galaxy. "Jake, you're doing well," she said quietly. "I know this is hard for you." Jake nodded. "I'm fine, Ambassador. Just taking it all in." She looked around the hall at all the different species. 5 years ago, most of these people wanted us dead. Now they're here to talk about peace. That's something. Jake knew what she meant. 5 years ago, the Zephyrians had attacked Colony Prime. Jake had been there. He had the scars to prove it. "The welcome ceremony starts in 20 minutes, Ambassador," Grant said. "After that, we'll have some time to meet people before the real talks begin tomorrow. Remember, we're here to listen as much as we are to talk." Jake watched her walk away to speak with the other diplomats. He looked around the hall again and saw more aliens arriving. Some he recognized from the files he had studied. Others were completely new to him. The galaxy was bigger than he had thought. A service robot rode up to him, its round body painted white with the station symbol on the side. "Would you like refreshments, human?" It asked in perfect English. "Coffee, please. Black." The robot extended a small arm with a cup. The coffee smelled right, but when Jake took a sip, it tasted strange. Everything here tasted strange. He found a quiet spot near one of the big windows that looked out into space. Stars filled the darkness, more stars than he could count. Somewhere out there was Earth, and somewhere else was what was left of Colony. Prime. Jake had been 22 when the attack happened. He was working as an engineer on the colony's power systems, fixing problems and keeping the lights on. It was supposed to be a safe job on a safe world. Then the Zephyrian ships came. He touched his collar again, feeling the edge of the scar tissue underneath. The doctors had done their best, but plasma burns were different from regular burns. They went deeper, hurt more, and took longer to heal. The scars covered most of his chest, his arms, and part of his neck. He had learned to dress carefully, to choose clothes that hid the marks. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice said over the station speakers, "the welcome ceremony will begin in the main hall in 10 minutes. All diplomatic personnel, please gather near the central platform." Jake finished his coffee and walked toward the platform. The different species were forming groups, humans with humans, Zephyrians with Zephyrians. It was like a school dance where nobody wanted to be the first to cross the room. The station commander, a tall alien with silver skin and no hair, stepped onto the platform. When he spoke, his words came out in several languages at once through the translation system. "Welcome to Kepler Station," he said. "For too long, our species have known only war. Today we begin to know peace. Let us hope that what we build here will last longer than what we have torn down." The ceremony was short but formal. Each species leader said a few words about hope and cooperation. Jake had heard it all before in the practice sessions, but hearing it here, surrounded by former enemies, made it feel different. When the ceremony ended, the groups began to mix. Jake watched Ambassador Grant shake hands with a Zephyrian general. The general's 4 eyes focused on her face, and Jake wondered what he was thinking. Jake was checking his schedule on his tablet when someone bumped into him. His coffee cup, which he had gotten refilled, tilted and spilled down the front of his uniform. "Oh no," he said, looking down at the brown stain spreading across his chest. "I am sorry," said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see a young Zephyrian female looking at him with concern. She had the same 4 eyes and blue skin as the others, but she seemed younger, less formal. "It's okay," Jake said. "Accidents happen. Your uniform," she said, pointing at the stain. "It will be damaged." Jake looked down at his shirt. The coffee had soaked through the fabric. "I need to clean this up before it sets," he said. "There are facilities down that corridor," the Zephyrian said, pointing toward a sign that showed the universal symbol for restrooms. Jake nodded his thanks and walked quickly toward the restroom. The stain was spreading, and he could feel the coffee soaking through to his undershirt. He needed to get it clean before the fabric was ruined. The restroom was empty when he got there. Jake went to the sink and looked at himself in the mirror. The stain covered most of his chest, dark brown against the light blue of his uniform shirt. He started to unbutton his jacket, then stopped. The door could open at any time, and someone might see. But the stain was getting worse, and he needed to clean it now. Jake looked at the door, then back at the mirror. He was alone. He could be quick. He took off his jacket and hung it on a hook. Then he pulled his shirt over his head and held it under the cold water. The coffee began to wash out, but slowly as he scrubbed the fabric, Jake caught sight of himself in the mirror. The scars were visible now, covering his chest and arms like a map of pain. They were white and pink and red, raised lines that told the story of the day Colony Prime burned. He had learned to live with them, to forget they were there. But seeing them now, under the bright lights of the alien station, they looked worse. Then he remembered. Jake focused on cleaning his shirt. The coffee was coming out, but it was taking time. He scrubbed it harder, trying to get every bit of the stain. He didn't hear the door open behind him.